when I start a conversation with a client to see if I'm the right fit for them, I don't even consider producing their show unless they're willing to do video, because I just don't think that doing a podcast without video I don't think that it's the best thing for somebody to be doing. And I only want to work with someone if I can offer them the best thing to do.
Hi, and welcome to the Conscious Marketer Podcast. This is Richard here, and I'm joined by Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
Hey.
And we have a special guest today who's going to talk about one of our favorite topics, which is podcasting. And he's also a musician. Let me introduce you to Justin J. Moore. He is an internationally recognized singer-songwriter with a catalog boasting 50 million streams. As a social media influencer, he has a following of 300,000 and an estimated 1 billion views of his videos. Justin's also the founder and CEO of Podigy Podcast, a podcast production agency aimed at helping coaches simplify their content creation and become recognized industry leaders. Hi, Justin. Welcome to the Conscious Marketer Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And we normally ask kind of what's a little bit of your backstory. I know you have a really interesting one. I was reading your bio about how you grew up. Could you maybe share about how you got into the music business and how that kind of unfolded?
Totally. Yeah. My parents are opera singers. So both from Juilliard. So my life was all about music from a really young age. And I I sort of I really learn a lot of what I do by imitating, as most people do. And so my parents were always practicing, always singing, teaching people how to sing. And I think I just have a brain that's very detail oriented and very interested and highly attentive to stuff. And so I just started developing my own voice from a really young age, just sort of singing and working with my parents a little bit to hone things in. And then I grew up performing with my parents. I grew up performing in bands and rock bands, and thought I was going to be an opera singer when I was 19. I was ready to go off to school to be an opera singer. My dad told me, "I don't think you should do that because there's really no money in it anymore," which is super true. Opera is a very getting smaller and smaller all the time. So I pivoted. I went to business school, dropped out 2 years in so that I could pursue my own music. And so far, I've made some waves in the dance music world as a songwriter, and I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs for the dance industry. Got lots of streams and stuff. And yeah, that's sort of my story in the music world. And for podcasting, I somewhere along the way, I was already doing audio for my music all the time, and somebody asked me, "Hey, I've got this podcast. It's got like 100,000 downloads, and you think you can edit this?" I've been doing it myself. I don't want to do it anymore. So I did it, and it kind of, it ended up being something that I actually liked doing. But over time, I realized that just the audio wasn't going to be enough. There's a lot that goes into podcasting. And so, just audio became audio and writing, and then that became audio and video and writing, and then some content. And soon enough, I had a team of 12 people producing podcasts for people all over the world in all kinds of niches, and really just trying to produce podcasts for people who are sharing a message that actually makes the world a better place. And so that gives a lot of meaning to our business. And it's not just producing podcasts, but it's actually helping people share messages that improve the state of the world. So that's my story in podcasting and in music. Obviously the short version.
Did you find that having your own podcast boosted your music video views? Did that coexist in that way?
No, my lives don't really cross at the moment. Surprisingly, they really don't cross. I have a quite a big social media following for my music, and in that world, I'm pretty well known, especially in the dance world. I'm not pretty well known in the music industry, but in the dance music industry, European dance music, I am pretty well known there, and so I have like a lot of credibility, and I'm definitely seen as like an authority over there. But then in the business world, I'm still just a young little scrub, and I'm kind of working my way up, trying to get people to reply to DMs. And on the music side, there's huge people in my DMs, and so I'm sort of like it's been incredibly humbling to be building this business, starting from nothing while also having sort of a booming career over in the music world at the same time.
Maybe you could share just some of the fundamentals of podcasts, because I think people think of, I think podcasts were initially audio, and then you mentioned that it's kind of coming to audio, video. My first podcast was actually audio and video, and then we paired back to audio when we relaunched the Conscious Marketer podcast. And then now that we just crossed our 100 episodes, so we're actually going to like go back into video, but find different ways to do it right. Can you maybe share where you see the industry going in terms of like video and how people can use podcasts as a way to get their content out?
Yeah, well, good question, and a good sign of where the industry is going is seen in the kind of clients that we work with. So when I work with a client, or when I start a conversation with a client to see if I'm the right fit for them, I don't even consider producing their show unless they're willing to do video, because I just don't think that doing a podcast without video I don't think that it's the best thing for somebody to be doing. And I only want to work with someone if I can offer them the best thing to do. So it really just comes down to where people consume your podcast. And sure, there's obviously like the largest amount of your podcast consumption is going to happen on podcasting platforms like Spotify and Apple, but there's also a certain percentage of that will happen on YouTube. And for that, obviously, you need the video. But more than that, you want to be able to reach people where they are. And without video, you're going to have a really tough time creating content that doesn't look like garbage to post on social media. So with the video element, you can throw on some captions, do some stock music, some stock footage, make a really, really cool, engaging, kind of quick clip for people to engage with. But if you don't have that, you're going to be sharing something that really nobody's going to engage with. And so if you're already spending the 45 minutes or an hour to record your podcast episode, and you're not just clicking one button to also add video, I think that it's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. And I just don't even, I don't work with people who aren't willing to do the video portion as well. Obviously, there's exceptions. Like, can you grow a podcast with just audio? Of course you can. Can you, is your podcast worse without video? No, but it's a matter of like, if you're starting a show, you're trying to grow a show, if you're not using video, you're just missing like 50% of the market. And so it's just a no-brainer for me. You're leaving a lot of money on the table without video. Um, so this has just happened over the last year or so that video has become sort of a necessity for podcasters. This industry did start out as just audio, like it was like radio. But over the last couple of years, people like me who are deep in the podcasting industry, producing the shows for people, are realizing that video is sort of going to be the only way moving forward. And I like that it's like that, because it gives people a lot more options in how they're going to share their podcast and how people are going to find their show. So I think it's a good thing.
So I know with audio versions of podcasts, you can syndicate it out to all these sites and people can find it in the searches and things of that nature. You can get ranked, and that's really great. If I were to start to upload the video of my podcast on YouTube or any other place you recommend, how am I going to get people there?
Honestly, if you're going to put your podcast on YouTube, I would not spend time trying to get people to go to YouTube to consume it. YouTube, your podcast is always going to be smaller on YouTube than it will be on streaming platforms. You're never going to get the same amount of traction there unless you're somebody who already has some type of audience from somewhere else or already has a YouTube channel. But the only way that we get views from our YouTube videos, the YouTube versions of our podcasts, is that we write a LinkedIn newsletter, which is starting to build up quite a following. And our podcast is all about podcasting. It's like podcast inception. And over there, people click through the newsletter and they see the video through there. And that's really the only way we get views. So I don't actually think that trying to grow a YouTube channel version of your podcast is something worth your time. I would spend time doing other stuff, like trying to get more reviews on your show or get better guests on your show, not thinking about how to rank your YouTube videos higher.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then what do you see as being the advantages? Because you just sold me on the idea of having a video podcast. So if we're not using it to get more views, what is the advantage of it? Why is it so important?
I'll tell you by briefly explaining what we offer coaches, because we work mostly with the coaching industry, but we also do stuff for authors, for course creators, and for some finance people, wealth managers, stuff like that. So our offer is that you record your 1 hour a week podcast. And from that video podcast, the weekly video podcast, we create your entire month of social media content for you without you having to lift a finger. So the only way that's possible is because we repurpose the full video into captions, social media clips with stock footage and music that make for really awesome content. So if you don't have video, you're going to be sharing something like either a still image, which is not so good, or an audiogram, which is a little bit better, but still not so good. It's the eyes that capture people as they're scrolling through whatever social media platform. So without the eyes, you're not going to be able to actually stop anybody. So the reason why you use video is that you can repurpose your video into tons of social media content. Otherwise, your podcast is just not going to reach people who are on social media. And you don't have to use your social media content from your podcast as a way to grow your podcast. You can also just use the social media content that you create from your show as good standalone organic content for your social media that actually provides value to people. So that's where video comes in. I really don't consider YouTube to be a super important place for your podcast to go, but I do think that missing out on the content that you can share from your show, that's where video is a necessity.
And can you give us an example if, say it's a 45-minute episode, like how many clips would you be taking, or like what does that look like? And then are you also, I guess that's the first question. I seem to be combining questions today. Are you cross posting it to Instagram and Facebook and other places too? Is that kind of the idea? Or
so yeah, great question. The content from one episode, it's sort of the sky's the limit. So if you really wanted to, you could clip a 45-minute episode, albeit an interesting episode. You could clip it like 20 times. The clips can be anywhere from 15 seconds to a minute long, so you can clip it as many times as your heart desires. But with our program that we use for coaches, we clip it 5 to 8 times an episode. So you get 30 or so clips every single month from your weekly episode. And as far as where you post them, they're going to perform the best as Instagram Reels, and that's the main place that we are guiding people to post. But that also is because most of the coaches and most of the clients that we work with are getting a lot of their business through Instagram. And so Instagram should be the place where they look like they look like the expert in every single way, and they look like the authority in what they're talking about. And the podcast content does that in a couple of ways. Number one, you're bringing guests who are hopefully credible onto your show, and showing your face side by side along theirs can really spark a lot of trust in people towards you. But also, the other way that it's building your authority is that by sharing that much content from your show, you're really just sharing your voice and sharing your ideas and the way that you speak about things. And that helps people trust you. And it really does over time build you into a thought leader and an authority within your industry.
When people come to you, when these coaches come to you that are your clients, do they have ideas for what they want their podcast to be already? Or do you help them come up with good hooks or good ideas? Because I think there's probably a lot of people listening that have great content that would love to start a podcast, but they're not sure what kind of hook is going to stick.
Yeah, I really like when it comes to coming up with your podcast idea, we're pretty lucky in the industry that we're serving, because most of these coaches already have a validated high ticket offer, which means that they already have their niche audience well defined. So their podcast is just going to be about what their coaching offer is about. Like if you've got a coach who's working with men over 40 to help develop like mindset stuff, then that's going to be their podcast hook. That's what their podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about the thing that they're already selling. If you're somebody coming from a different industry and you're looking at, how do I create a podcast about something? It's less about what you think is going to be received the best from a potential audience. And it's more about what are you actually interested in? Like you're not going to sit there an hour every single week and talk about something that doesn't actually interest you. You're going to get to episode like 12 and you're going to be done. And that's what happens to like 99% of podcasts. Not like 99% of podcasts. It's what happens to 99% of podcasts. Only 1% of podcasters make it past episode 20. And so you're in the top 1%, whether you realize it or not. Just determines how you identify yourself as, or how you identify the top 1%, but you're in it. We're in it too. Most people aren't. And it's because people just don't make it past that. And I think one of the reasons for that is that people start their show with too much of the audience in mind rather than what are they actually interested in. And people are going to gravitate towards you when you're doing something that aligns with who you are. They're going to feel that, and you're going to gain the audience that you want to have, not some fake audience that's listening to you ramble on about something that you actually don't care about. And so when you're thinking about how do I start a podcast, that's not something that they ask me. That's something that I ask them. What do you want to talk about? And that's what you do. And then there's obviously strategies in terms of how am I going to name my show, how am I going to write the description, and those are things that we do help them with. But I don't really, it's not my place to decide what someone's going to talk about on their show.
That's really interesting. It's kind of funny because today I've listened to a bunch of podcasts, but I started listening to Joe Rogan today, and he's one of the, if not the top podcaster in the world, and it was just kind of funny because it was like that. He was just on with this guy, and they were talking about hunting ghosts, and it was just rambling on for like 10 minutes about hunting ghosts and ghost hunting. And he mentioned Rupert Sheldrake, who he's an author that talks about morphogenic fields, like a book I would have read like 20 years ago. But it was just really interesting because I was like, so it just kind of proves the point. I think Rogan's really good at, he has interest, and he's at a place where he likes to talk about what he likes to talk about. He doesn't need to pretend, like, go, okay, this is what people want to hear.
Yep.
And then it makes the conversation interesting, and they're not like awkward about it because they care about the subject or they're interested in it.
Totally. And that's why people gravitate towards it the way they do.
Yeah. It's kind of like it seems like a style. It's almost like a meandering conversation, some of these podcasts. I don't know like what you would name it if there's a particular type, but I think we probably put a lot more effort into trying to think about how to provide value. Can you share a little bit about how you would go about planning some of the podcasts? Like what's your process to work with people so when they come to you, so that you set them up for success?
There's definitely a lot that goes into actually doing a podcast the right way. And there's like a lot of the mistakes can be avoided right at the beginning, and you can set yourself up with a pretty good show. But I have been sort of I've been using an analogy about sort of like building a house. I don't have the analogy totally down yet. I'm actually working on an ebook that is going to deliver the exact process we use to launch shows for our clients that I'm just going to give away completely for free. It might be done by the time this is out, and if it is, then I'll definitely send it to you guys. But it's sort of like building a house. So at the very start, you want to make sure that you've got like a blueprint, like some type of plan, because you don't want to start building without some type of plan. So we usually take people through a pretty rigorous series of questions so that we can get some good information about their business, about like how much money they're making, how much they charge for each client, so that we can determine whether or not they're going to get a return on their investment with our program. And then we look at what type of people they're trying to talk to. So like, who is the podcast for? How are you going to serve them? What are you going to serve them by doing? Are you going to teach them something? Are you going to learn with them? Are you going to coach them? Are you going to like trying to figure out what is this going to be? Like, what's it going to feel like? And then once you've got the blueprint down, then you've got to build the foundation. And so what we do for that is get people all the right equipment. Actually, the microphone that you've got, Kylie, is what we give to all of our clients, the Shure MV7. So we get them the right equipment, get them set up with some soundproofing stuff for their room. So that's like building, and then obviously like the artwork and all that stuff, like all the pieces. We're trying to build a show that aligns with the person's personality. That includes writing custom music that suits the person's like soul. Like it's got to feel like them. The biggest turn off for me when I listen to a show is when I hear like some really like corporatized like dun 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 like welcome back. Like I can't do that anymore, and I just won't let people go down that road. So custom music, do the intro yourself, be authentic, be organic. That's all part of the plan. And then actually building the house is like, how are we going to do each episode? How are we going to like, building the house would be like, where are the windows going to go? What's going to happen over there? And that's like the content of the house. That's the episodes. What are the episodes going to feel like? And then at the very end, there's you put the roof on it and you've launched. And so and now you put it out into the world and you show it, and bring people inside and hope that they have a good time. You want to like give them a drink and like nurture their experience, that they feel welcome there. And so the analogy of a house, I think, works really well because it literally is like the same steps. And the whole goal, like we have a huge list of things that we do to launch a show. This is something that if somebody didn't know about podcasting and tried to get this right without like knowing how to actually do the steps, there's like a 1 in a billion chance that they'd be able to get the system down the way that we have it. So when a client comes on with us, we try to make it as easy as possible and run them through every single piece of the launching puzzle. But it's a lot of stuff, and it's really like it's a complicated thing to get a podcast together the right way. But once it's set up, then you just got to live in the house, and that's pretty easy. You just record, and then they drop the file with us, and we publish it everywhere for them. They literally don't lift a finger, and then they get delivered a little package at the end of each month with 40 pieces of awesome social media content, so that they can also automate their social media content and get off of the hamster wheel of always trying to create content. So yeah, it's a pretty well-rounded offer for coaches. It's saving people 8 to 10 hours a week, which if you're charging $100 an hour is a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have mostly coaches with high ticket offers coming in and doing this. It's a lot of work. Obviously, you just explained how much work it is, and there's even more to it than what you even said, because we know from doing our own. Why do you think it's a more valuable marketing strategy than, say, and you didn't say that it was, but I'm guessing you think it is more so than like trying to put together a Facebook ads funnel or trying to do affiliate marketing or something like that? Because marketing is hard. I mean, we teach marketing, we do marketing. It's not easy for the average person. All of these strategies take a ton of work. What do you see as being the advantages of doing a podcast versus doing something else that's equally hard and challenging?
That's a really good question. The first thing that came to my mind is that I can speak from experience of what it feels like to run a successful ad campaign and what it feels like to run a successful podcast, and it's very different. They accomplish. I feel like when with our ads, we get leads who may or may not turn into sales calls, who may or may not turn into clients, and that's it. That's what our ads do. And that's, so it's a way for us to get clients, and that's the only thing that it is good for, is the paid ads, I guess. And you can also talk about brand awareness or whatever, but the podcast gets us clients, maybe at a slower stream. It's not its only goal, but the podcast is a long game thing too. And so the podcast is building an audience that's loyal to you and that trusts you for what you do. And so not only it's that, but it's also, it's a way to generate leads for your business. So over time you can, give people, give for free, totally for free, and then give a little ask like, oh, you can, download my lead magnet that I just did. So you can get leads from your podcast, but you're also networking. You're bringing people onto your show who you otherwise, like, why would you have a reason to talk to somebody if you didn't ask them to come on your podcast? If someone asked me to like hop on a Zoom call to just meet, I'm like, why? Like, what's the agenda? Like, I want to know. My time is valuable. I'm not just going to like hop on a 30-minute Zoom call to just meet and talk about whatever comes to mind. But suddenly you invite somebody onto a podcast and you've got a collaborative project that the two of you guys are working on. And when you complete your podcast, you've worked together on something and you've built a connection with that person. And that can turn into some type of partnership, or that can turn into a client. In our case, we've gotten a few clients from guests on our show. So you're building relationships with people. And then obviously you are creating a load of content for all of your platforms. So paid ads do one thing, they get you clients. Your podcast gets you clients in a longer way. So you got to be more patient, in less clients than what you're going to get from paid ads, at least a good paid ad. But it's more of like a brand awareness, networking, authority building, time saving machine, and only time saving if you use a company to outsource it. Like I tell, like, we save our clients money. We have an expensive program, but we save our clients money. They always get a return on their investment because most of our clients have like, a $15,000 offer. So they, only got to get like one client to pay off everything. And so not only do they get a return on their investment, but they save so much time by not having to sit in front of the camera or dancing on TikTok to make content. So it's sort of like I see podcasting as the ultimate multitasking tool for business owners and for solo entrepreneurs. I think that it is unbeatable in terms of what it offers. And when you work with a team, that's all with a caveat. When you work with a team, when you do it yourself, think it's a waste. I think a lot of times it's a waste of time. I own a podcast production agency. I run a successful podcast. I run another successful business in the music industry. And if like I literally am in the podcasting world, and I would never ever produce my own podcast. I would never write my own show notes ever. And I'm in the business of doing that. And I'm a podcast production expert, and I never touch podcasts. So there is literally no reason why a coach or anybody in any business industry should ever be touching their podcast. That needs to be outsourced as far away from you as possible. Like, keep it at a 10-foot pole length at all times. Give your feedback, give your input, but be the leader. Don't be the person in the weeds, like editing everything and overseeing all the things. Just let your podcast work for you. Find a team to do it for you. Build a team if you want. But I also don't, I think that building a team for your podcast is also hard. And it's hard to find people who are good at what they do. And it's hard to then manage those people and stay on top of how much time they're working and all these things. And so that's where we come in and we say, we've got the team. We'll take care of managing the team. You just drop us your episodes and the rest is going to be outsourced. And so that's why I built this business, because it was such a struggle to do it on my own before.
Well, you've given us so many different ideas. I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask a little bit about, are you kind of using some AI tools or integrating some AI into some of your podcast production, or even helping your authors and podcasters use some of that in their work?
Yeah, definitely using AI. We use AI in multiple ways. We've got ChatGPT integrated with a bunch of our stuff. We do a lot of our writing stuff using AI, which saves us time and thereby makes the offer more affordable for the clients. So yes, we are on the cutting edge of podcasting AI. We're using AI to, like, if somebody has really bad audio, we can use AI to repair some of the audio. So there's like it's sort of, anytime that a new AI thing comes out, we analyze it and figure out whether or not we're going to use it for our business. But people can trust when they work with us, which I really like, that we're going to be on the very, very edge of the current AI tools so that they don't have to be. For instance, like with our show notes, we just drop the audio file into an AI analyzer, and it gives us a transcript. It gives us a summary. It gives us timestamps, titles, keywords, quotes, everything, like a full blog post. And we just have to sort of edit and add the human element, but it does most of the work for us. So yeah, AI is definitely a big part of what we do, and as we move forward, it's going to only become more of a part of what we do, and we want to make sure we don't get left behind by it.
So I feel like we've talked about a lot of things that are pretty advanced here, which is amazing because a lot of our people are ready to implement a lot of these things. But if someone's just starting out, what are some of your first couple of steps that you think that they should take? I know for you, you get everybody set up with the right equipment and you do that type of stuff. If I'm coming to you and I'm like, I am starting this from total scratch, what are some of the first steps to getting it off the ground?
If you really want to do it yourself, at least don't do the audio yourself. So first thing that I would do is I'd probably go to fiverr.com and I would probably look for somebody who's a podcast editor, or I would go to some type of VA service online where you can find people from other countries to help take some of the workload. Maybe get an assistant for your podcast and start there. Start by building the team and do it seriously. Like, don't just throw it together. I used to advocate for people just kind of throwing it together and doing it like independently, but I just don't think that podcasting works as well for that. And so I would start by planning things. I would start by just writing out, like, what are you going to do for your first 24 episodes? 24 episodes is 6 months. That's how long our program is. I have every single client sit down and write down their 24 episodes. How many of them are going to be interviews? How many of them are going to be by yourself? How are you going to find topics to discuss when you're talking by yourself? You can use AI to find topics. You can think about frequently asked questions that you get in your business and create episodes all around that. So, and write down the emails of the guests you're going to bring on. And then when are you going to reach out to them? How are you going to schedule the interview? Where are you going to do the interview? So stuff like that. My ebook that I'm writing, I don't know if it'll be done by now, but it'll be a good starting place for people, because that would actually, like, I'm going to give the tools that we actually use for recording video, for what kind of equipment you need. But I would start building some type of structure so that you don't start and then end up stopping like the 99% of people who do. And mostly, yeah, I think that episode planner, the first 24 episodes, that does a lot for people. Like just having it planned out, it makes it real. Um, and then I would look into having AI also take over some of the workload for you. So use AI for the writing, use AI for whatever you can, and then do not leave the value on the table by not clipping the content from your show. So then I would look into how to clip podcast content and how to get tons of content from your podcast.
Well, you've given so many amazing tips and ideas, and I'm a big fan of you already, Justin. We just met today, but you speak with a level of wisdom and clarity, and also you can tell that you're really committed to helping your clients, do good in the world and also create a really great product. So if people want to learn more about what you do and reach out to you, how can they find you?
So I appreciate that, by the way, and yeah, I've enjoyed talking with you guys as well. The best way would be to go onto Instagram at Podigy Podcasts, and you can send me a DM, all capitals Podigy, so Podigy, and that way I'll know that you came from here, and we can chat about whatever you want to talk about. I'm always open to just answering people's questions with no expectations. But also, if you want to inquire about our services, then you can just send me that DM. And if you liked what you heard, if you think that maybe you're the right fit for that, then I'd be happy to ask you some questions and get a better idea for who you are. And like I always say, I really just don't want to work with. I don't want to work with just anybody. I want to work with people who this offer can actually really help. And so through a series of questions, can figure out if that's for you. That should definitely be comforting to people because that we don't just take anybody's money. We actually want to make sure it's a good fit. So DM me Podigy at Podigy Podcasts on Instagram, and that'll be the best way to start a dialogue.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast, and thanks to all the listeners who are listening wherever you are, Spotify, iTunes, and soon to be YouTube and Instagram feeds, according to this podcast. So I think that you've convinced us. Not that we needed convincing. We just kind of did what we could for initial, but we recognized that we need to do that as well.
Totally.
So you can also go to consciousmarketer.com/podcast and get all the show notes and the links to Justin's websites and Instagram feed there. Thank you so much for being on our show today, Justin. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.